Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Today is actually our 200th episode of the podcast, which is kind of crazy because I think when we first started this podcast, it was kind of one of these, why don't we just give it a shot? We had these I think our first one was like a review of maybe the original Float Ride Energy from Reebok or something like that. And
sounds about right.
Yeah. It was just a way for us to like talk a little bit more casually and in a roundtable format. We actually formally called this Doctors of Running Virtual Roundtable. So it's pretty fun that we are here at episode 200. And I think that we have really enjoyed this space to engage in conversations with each other, brainstorm a lot of things, challenge each other's thoughts, hear from each other. It's been a gift for me, and I think for all of us to be able to do it. So thank you all for following along over these 200 episodes. It's been a really fun journey. And with this being our 200th episode, our friends at Scratch, who are sponsoring this episode, have generously offered a $100 hydration pack giveaway, or hydration prize pack giveaway. And so if you want to enter to win this prize pack, all that you need to do after you subscribe wherever you're at and leave us a review, please, of the podcast, you need to head to the YouTube posting of this podcast, which releases on Sundays. So if you're listening on audio, you also need to jump over to YouTube. You'll have to comment below. And what we want to hear from you is, what do you hope to see with the Doctors of Running podcast over the next 100 or 200 episodes? And then you will be entered to win the Scratch giveaway, which is a $100 hydration pack. So thank you to Scratch for providing that. And it's just one way that we can celebrate all of us getting here to episode 200. Matt, what are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at because last time we gave a code and I already blew $100 on Scratch for my personal funds.
Well, and speaking of that code, the code still exists too. So if you haven't used the code yet, it's a one-time use code, but you can get 25% off your order. It's DOR24. So you can use that code. And Matt apparently used the code already and got things rolling.
Yes, I did.
I'm not going to lie. I used it too. I ordered another soft flask because I really liked that soft flask.
Amazing. All right. So also, speaking of Matt, though, what we want to do is, I know I mentioned it last week on the podcast with Dr. Hookgamer, but Oter was on the podcast, so he didn't get to really celebrate Matt. But Matt officially has defended his dissertation and is a PhD. So huge congratulations to Matt. If you've been following this podcast, you would have had to be not listening to know that Matt is not working on his PhD. We've talked about his work. He's talked about the grind. He's talked about the struggle. He's talked about the triumphs. But we're here and he has his PhD. And Matt, what I want to hear from you is maybe one big takeaway from this whole dissertation process and what you hope that the PhD is going to help you be able to do in the future.
I will say, for those who've been the OG listeners, the podcast actually started around when I started my PhD. Because remember, I had moved to Azusa, California.
That's right.
We started this, and so that's kind of crazy to think about. So you said I'm only limited to one sentence.
No, one takeaway.
One takeaway.
And what you hope that this does for you in the future and for others.
One of the big takeaways is, and I'm very fortunate, but I also think I matched very well with this, is to be able to do this stuff, you have to have endurance. You're going to learn along the way. One of my advisors was jokingly told me, hey, like you've grown so much over the 5 years, and a lot of it I had to be patient and realize you were going to have to figure out. And so endurance is really key, both in learning and persevering. That's why we're at 200 episodes. We just kept going. And I think that's really important to remember because things take time. It took the average time it takes to do a PhD is about 5 to 6 years. So I'm right in that level. But perseverance and endurance is what I'm taking forward. And also the realization is things are just slow, right? Research takes step by step. You don't usually find huge, big things. Huge, big things come as a culmination of huge amounts of work. And that's so anytime you see a big performance, there's years of small steps behind it. And so appreciating those small steps is probably one of the bigger takeaways that I got and will continue to take with me as I continue to do research and contribute and try to be the best I can be and support everybody.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been a joy watching you get there.
Yeah,
So
what am I going to
go.
complain about now? I'm just kidding.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
That's hilarious. Awesome. Well, today we actually have a really fun episode. So our media manager, Bach, and audio engineer, BJ, came up with this idea, and they reached out to a lot of some of our people that we've gotten to know over these last 200 episodes who have all of these people, I believe, all of them have been a guest on the podcast at some point, and they're from different portions of the industry, whether working for shoe companies or our PTs with runners and running coaches, all this kind of stuff. And they reached out to them and gathered a mailbag that we have from these people who have been on our podcast and have followed what we've been up to. So that is what we're going to be going through today, is this mailbag. And I'm going to start it off with Tina from Brooks. And she has an icebreaker question for us. She says, an icebreaker question I'd love to ask you in general is, who would be your like celebrity best friend? Who would you just kind of like hang out with in real life if you think that you actually got to know them? But she wants to kind of make it running. So who would be your celebrity best friend who's in that running sphere, and why?
That's a good question. You got one, Matt?
I got two. Does that count? Because I'm stuck between them.
Yeah, go for it.
So it would either be Jared Ward or Molly Seidel. So Jared, obviously, because
you and Jared would be great.
Yeah, fellow like scientist, researcher, just to get to pick his brain and talk to him both about his experience as well as what he's looking at research wise would be really, really cool. And I feel like Molly would just be a boss to hang out with, like really fun, like good sense of humor, good, like someone who knows what it's like to be challenged heavily and continue to persevere. I think those two off the top of my head would be really fun to go train with and hang out with.
I'm just going to go next because I was also, it's funny. I was going to say Jared Ward, mostly from like, I would love to just hang out with him and talk like the science of running. And I told these guys, and they know this about me, like of all of us at Doctors of Running, I know the least about like the professional running world. Like I'm not like a professional running nerd. Like I was like, oh, when are the trials happening? And they're like, they're happening. They've been going on for like weeks. And I'm like, oh, cool.
To be fair, I had the exact same thing this year. I was like, wait, the Olympic trial, like I'm living in
They always come up quick though. Yeah, it just like happens. And before you know it, you're 3 days into it and you're like, wait, what is, and maybe it's a final tonight? Like,
maybe it's a phase of life thing. Cause I'm also in grad school and teaching and stuff. So it could be that too, but it's not like I grew up, following this stuff. And the other person was also Molly because she's from Wisconsin. And so I know we'd be able to connect on like a lot of our history just because she's from this area. But also in that sense too, like another one would be Chris Zielinski because he also is from Stevens Point. Sweet. So that would be even more of a cool connection because like Rasheen Willis, she's also from Stevens Point. So I feel like I would probably deviate towards to Wisconsin people. Don't know if we'd be best friends, but there'd be the people I'd want to meet, I guess, is how I think about it. What do you say, David?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like you guys have these like super, I don't know, like these scientists and these people like
who likes tacos is David's answer. Is it like,
who
have I seen eating tacos?
I think I would honestly like take your pick of any of the gents over at the Coffee Club podcast. They're a pretty kooky bunch, and I think it'd be a fun, just long run, just hang out and talk to them. And they're also super big nerds of the sport, and they're in it. So they all are professional athletes. For those that don't know that podcast, and so that's Morgan McDonald, who's a Wisconsin Badger former. Same with Ollie Hoare. Yeah, he ran at Wisconsin as well, and Jordy Beamish, who ran at NAU. And it'd be funny and kind of kooky too, because none of them are American either. So like, it'd just be like, I think it'd just be a fun bunch. Just tag along with them on some runs. Not that I can keep up, but
you could be pretty close for a lot of their worst stuff.
No, I would not. But those guys are running like Jordy just ran 8:09 in the steeple.
Dang,
like that was a big boy time. Yeah,
that's cool. Actually, can I actually ask this question about steeplechase?
Yeah.
So please give me some grace on this question. I'm talking to you two, but also everybody. So I feel like in most races, if you fall down, there's no way that you could win. But I have seen
That's not true.
Like 800, you can't win the 800 if you fall down.
Yeah.
And
People have done it in the 15 though, haven't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just long enough where you can. I was just thinking about like why, if they hadn't fallen down, they probably could have finished even faster than they did, but they don't really what do you think it is that allows people to fall? Maybe this just applies to more races. Fall and then get back in it.
Oh, are you thinking about like Kenneth Rooks last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, the BYU guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you get such an adrenaline rush. I mean, your first thing is like get back in the race. And then once you're back in the race, you're so hyped up that like, I mean, anything can happen once you're back in it. I mean, it's anyone's race. So
it activates an extra mental gear, maybe.
Yeah. I think it says a lot about people too, because sometimes, I mean, you see people fall and they just shut down and they just are like, all right, race is over, I'm done. And then others, maybe they push a little bit and they're like, oh, okay, it's not happening today. I guess it all depends on like how bad the fall is and how much time they lost.
Right.
But then some people race their way back up. Like Mo Farah won a gold when he fell in the middle of the race. Like, granted, they were running a lot slower. It was a 10K, I believe, right?
Yeah.
It was either a 10 or 5, but yeah.
I think it's less that it's like, if you fall, you can still win the steeple. I would give people more credit they are able to do that, because steeple chase is not just endurance, it's also technique and strength. Like, because
Tactic.
if you see people as they fatigue, like that's where you see some of those falls happen because they're tripping over the barriers. So technique, staying in it mentally, I think it gives people more credit that have fallen able to get back up rather than, hey, is it just something more so to that race? And all credit to anybody that's done a steeple. I attempted one, fell, and went face first into the barrier, and it's the only race I've ever dropped out of.
Cool. Well, that's all I had. So thanks for entertaining that question for me. Let's move on to our next one. This next one is from Connor at Running Warehouse, and he's been on the show before. And he's asking us a couple questions. The first one is, if you worked in the run industry, what brand would you want to work for and why? This is a tough question.
That is a tough question.
I still don't feel solid on it, by the way.
Somebody go first.
I'm saying nose goes for me. I got my finger on my nose and everything. David's first.
Yep.
Oh, no. I think I'd go between two right now, and there is some bias in one of them. So, well, actually, they're both up-and-coming companies. Like, I mean, I say up-and-coming, relatively in a business conglomerate world. The two that come to mind for me are Hoka and On. They have grown themselves to be a $1 billion company now, right? Both of them over the course of like 10 years, and they just have a lot of growth, and they're expanding a lot on their materials, on their divisions, and they're just trying to expand and get after it. Obviously Hoka is headquartered here in Santa Barbara. So there's a little bit of locality bias there as well, but just from like a respect of the industry and what they've been able to do in the short amount of time that they've been able to do it, I think it'd be a scrappy bunch to just be a part of and see what they're doing and have some fun there.
Matt, what do you got?
So again, I think some bias here, and there's probably two or three, honestly. So I'd say Saucony is the big one, just because we've been there, and I'm not saying and nobody else is, but it's a really good group. And it's been really fun to get to know them on a personal level. Not that introduces, I mean, we try not to introduce any bias, but that's really cool. I would say another one, just again, because of the people, I'd say Brooks. Just they've got some awesome people there, especially the biomechanics team, especially Tina. So I really appreciate what they're doing. And what they're trying to do. And then I would have to say the other one that I'm kind of tied with is On, just because I'm fascinated with some of the stuff I'm seeing and how quickly they're growing. And obviously you can tell I love their apparel. So that's another reason. But I wouldn't want to actually work in the running industry. I think it's been kind of a blessing to be on the outside and give some feedback. I don't know if I'd necessarily want to work in it.
Yeah. I think for me, when I was thinking about this, I was like, I think I would want a company that they know who they are, and that is committed to running. And I say that because there are some like larger companies that don't have as much of like an emphasis on like running, but they have running shoes and they have kind of like running lines. But I really want a company that really like is forward with their running as like what their brand is. So in that, there's a couple of them that kind of came to mind. One of them was Topo, because they were, founded from that. They have kind of this niche identity. I have a lot of times agreed with their footwear in terms of like enjoying running in them. So I assume when you work for a company, you have the opportunity to run in their stuff more, which means I probably wouldn't be doing DOR anymore. And so that I was thinking about like, what do I want to run in? I've agreed with their footwear, and I think that they're committed to running and running shoes. And so I think that would be cool. Plus location would be kind of fun out in Colorado, right? That's where they're at. So
no, they're East Coast.
Oh, they are.
What?
Okay, good.
Are you serious?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, that's embarrassing. Well, shows you how much I know.
Shout out, Russ.
I didn't know either. I'm not judging.
I love the East Coast.
They're like Boston-ish area.
I love the East Coast. It's great. Well, let's cut that. And then I think that I had sock news on my list too, but I don't know in terms of like what the hierarchy of like company ownership is. Like, I don't know how much autonomy they have in the decisions that they make. And I legitimately don't know. But again, just like Matt said, getting to know their team and their like their scientists on their team, they're awesome people who I think get it. And so I really like talking with them and would like to work with them. And then the other company that was in my mind was ASICS as well. I think that they have shown commitment to running, especially over these last 5 years, where they've overhauled a lot of stuff and they've been willing to make some changes and continue to push the envelope on all fronts and provide like a line of shoes that can reach a lot of different people. So, wow, Topo. I gotta look that up. Where is
no judgment?
They're Boston area, man. That's why a lot of their trail shoes are like built for like technical terrain and like wet. Yeah.
Well,
I know these things.
Ultra's in Colorado.
Yeah.
Right, David?
Yeah, originally from
Actually,
Utah.
I don't know where Ultra is.
I think our conversation and somebody commented.
Newton's in Colorado.
Newton's in Colorado.
Someone commented if we're wrong on this, but my understanding from Ultra was started in Utah, and then their headquarters are in Colorado.
Okay. Can I blame the yard work that I did today?
That's fine.
I've been outside since like 9 a.m. No, 10:30 a.m. doing yard work. So
I would say
maybe I'm just tired.
Not that I forgot about them, but ASICS I would also throw in the bag just from a sports science standpoint with some of the stuff they're doing. I'd also say I'd be interested there. So
yeah, it'd be fun to work in their lab. Like they're clearly doing testing.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on to Connor's second question. And it's about shoe durability. He says, shoe durability has remained somewhat similar over the years. We usually see a range of 300 to 500 miles, give or take, depending on the type of shoe and runner. Will we ever get to a time where shoes last 1,000 plus miles? Matt, you've got thoughts.
Yeah. Connor, I'm going to disagree with you there that I feel like, and maybe this is bias, that shoes are lasting far less than they used to. And I think that's partially not to blame, but just saying the materials are so much lighter than they used to be. If you grab an old shoe from the closet that's from 10 years ago, it is significantly heavier for the same model, the same, category. So things have gotten a lot lighter. And I think with that comes decreased durability. The outsoles do take a lot of weight when you add that stuff. So we're seeing less outsole. So, and then the midsoles being so much more soft, and not all of them, a lot of them are far more resilient and compliant, which means that they tend to deaden over a while. There's a lot of super shoes that are actually lasting a really, really long time. I don't think stuff's going to be lasting longer. I feel like the unfortunate trend that I'm seeing is things like even race shoes, and we'll announce this very shortly, but there is a very expensive race shoe that I have that just lasted 10 miles.
You can tell.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, you talk about it.
Evo Pro. Yeah. Adidas was nice to send me a pair, and the outsole came off in 10 miles for a $500 shoe. So, I don't think we're going to see something last 1,000 miles unless people really start to focus on how do we design the outsole better? How do we get resilient, compliant foams that actually hold that for a while? And I think to do that, you might have to do some very interesting chemical makeup. So I don't know. I think those times are gone. We used to have that. A lot of shoes would last 1,000 miles like 20, 30 years ago because of the materials, and they were heavier.
They were basically just bricks.
Yeah, they're just basically bricks. But I don't know if we're going to see that. And I know it's not answering the question. Well, it is. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see that.
No, it's answering the question. Yeah.
What do you think, David?
So for me, I think the root of it is, what is the consumer value and what does the industry value? And the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge ramp up towards performance. How fast, how light, how responsive can we make these pieces of footwear? And in that conversation, durability kind of does go out the window. You want it to last a little bit. They're like, oh, you'll get 4 marathons out of this. That's not too bad. Well, you just spent $250 for a shoe that's going to last 100 miles.
280, 275.
Yeah. So, it just depends, I think, on the goal of the industry and what people want. If the goal is genuinely durability, they will go and get the materials and they'll find a way to make it durable. So I think it really is just a root of the industry in itself. I think the ability to make more durable footwear is there. And I'm sure if you talk to the materials people and they go and they start pulling all these blends, they can make something that can last a crap ton of time. But is it worth that crap ton of time to make that shoe when they can make a lot more money, or just at least, get more pieces of footwear out to more other people not doing that? So that doesn't really answer the question either, but I think the potential is there. I just don't know if that's really what aligns with the footwear industry at this current moment.
I was going to say something super similar, where I think that, will we ever get there? I think we can, and I don't know how, but I do think that it would take either some niche company or some sort of external driver to say our actual chief priority is creating a shoe that lasts forever. And maybe that means that the industry creates shoes that have a very different construction, that maybe don't use foam or use something a little bit different to create kind of cushioning and kind of that structure under the foot. But I think it's possible, but there's no demand for it, right? There's desire for it. Like, everybody wants a shoe that lasts a long time. But I think that, as David was saying, right now, at least what's being sold to people, and also what seems to, I think, being asked from people, is something that's comfortable and something that is going to be soft. And when you want comfortable, soft, and lighter weight, you're going to sacrifice durability. And that won't be you can't have your cake and eat it too in that situation, I think.
I will say the other challenge that you run into with this is that there are going to be some people that will get 1,000 miles out of the shoe. The problem is, when that question's asked, you're only talking about the shoe. You're forgetting that the total equation is both the shoe and the human being. So there are people that can do that. But you would also have to have a foam and a material that reforms to its original form enough that it doesn't deform. Because a lot of people are very sensitive with it. When they really wear that shoe a certain way, you're going to get, excessive stresses on certain area because you're exacerbating the mechanics. So it's a question of, do you have the materials that are durable enough, but do you also have materials that are resilient enough to the changes that occur in a shoe that a runner impacts into it? So it's not just, hey, can we not have the outsole wear off? It's, can the structural properties of the shoe maintain enough so the human being, it's consistent enough for the human being that it doesn't cause issues for them? Because as soon as you get injured in a shoe, often you're like, I don't want to wear this anymore. And that there's a portion of durability to that, but that's more the human being reacting to the shoe. So it's a 2-part question of making sure you're looking at both parts of the equation.
Yeah, you're so right. I have a buddy who runs in his shoes for over 1,000 miles every single time, regardless of the shoe. He's just going to do it because he's like, well, I bought it, so I'm going to run it into the ground. So, and then it's used for another 5 years on his feet for every day. So
no judgment.
No, I think it's great. He's getting use out of it. Okay, let's move on to our next questions. This is a series of questions from Evan Day at Brooks, who's also been on the podcast. And his first question is this: what does the average runner put up with that they don't know that could be better? And he gives a couple examples like tight midfoot fit, mediocre traction, etc. that he's like, so what are they putting up with that they don't really need to actually put up with? What something that could actually be better that we're seeing as a general trend across the industry?
I think one that might come up pretty frequently is forefoot width. A lot of people kind of want wider forefeet, but they are willing to look the other way because of the other components in the shoe and how it responds to them. Not to say that's a blanket statement that, everyone needs wide forefoot shoes, but I do feel like that's something that comes up pretty frequently, specifically forefoot width. Yeah, that'd probably be my answer.
Mine was going to be forefoot volume. I feel like it's just been a trend where like they've been getting so low,
very like low, tapered,
super low vamps, and
you kind of,
it's just not comfortable, and that doesn't need to be that way. I also think if we think about certain kind of like pockets of the running industry and like people who are buying running shoes, there are so many people there are more people who are running that don't care about Doctors of Running podcast or Believe in the Run or Road Trail Run or any like of this or Kofuzi, like any of this run shoe review world. There are way more people there than the ones who are following what's going on here. I think that there are a lot of people that don't know that they don't need to put up with like a brick of a shoe that are super firm and that don't have any geometric shaping to them, like no heel bevel. Like they buy. Yeah, that was for you,
more
man.
heel bevel.
Thank you.
I think that there are a lot of people who just go buy, a shoe from a local like big box store, and they don't realize that they don't need to have something that doesn't have any geometric shaping to make running easier, especially when they're going out to buy something that's running in particular. But that's for a certain population. Matt, what do you think?
I was going to say volume as well, especially in the forefoot. I've noticed things are getting much lower and lower and lower. And I'm very lucky to have a fairly normal to slightly lower volume foot. But feet it's not just about width. You have to think about it in a three-dimensional shape. And there's a lot of people with higher volume feet that are probably like, oh, okay. And I'm not saying everything needs to be higher volume. I'm just saying that there's some thought that needs to be going into what's happening at least vertically in the foot. I also think that, Nathan, I think you hit this right in the head, that a lot of runners put up with very poorly made shoes. I'm not saying that the running industries do this. I'm saying like a lot of the big box stuff, a lot of the stuff that I see people wearing casually or like, recreational runners wearing, they're just like not good in terms of the geometry is not good. They're not really following natural biomechanics of human gait and running. And they just buy it because it was advertised to them, or they thought this is just the best thing. I think like comfort definitely of shoes is probably the big thing. And I think things across the industry have gotten a lot better, but where it's challenging because the majority of runners aren't going and probably buying a super, expensive shoe. Like we are very lucky to get to test what we do. And also, even if we weren't testing, to be able to afford decent running shoes, but $150 is quite a bit of money. And most people are not going to buy that. They're going to go to their big box store and buy a $50, $40 running shoe. And I think that across the industry, even into the more budget options, having appropriate geometry in running shoes and footwear in general is really important. Like I see a lot of casual stuff that blows my mind going, why would people wear that? I cannot imagine how that must be so uncomfortable. People will wear things for the fashion sake, which I cannot judge. But my bias as a PT is that I think geometry, fit, and overall comfort can continue to get better. And it has in the more expensive stuff, but I can't say the same thing for what really most people are buying. And that's challenging.
And actually, I know this is coming from a Brooks person, but I think in that realm, I think that something that Brooks is still doing that a lot of companies aren't is producing multiple shoes that still are around $100 to buy. I think the Revel is still $100. I think the Launch is still $100 or $110 or something. Yeah. The Trace is right around there. And I think Brooks pays attention to that group of people. When we've had them on the podcast, they care about the person who's just trying to like run to be healthy. They don't care. They do care. Probably. I don't, but my point is like their primary concern are not the like shoe nerds who come elite follow runners, these things. Like they want to reach the everybody. And so I think that's valuable to have.
Yeah.
And there are other companies that have shoes that are in that realm, but like the Cohesion from Saucony is shaped pretty well, but it is a little bit and it uses Power Run, I think now, or at least Ever Run, which isn't that bad, but
it's been upgraded. Yes. Yeah.
So
Wind
they
flow.
exist. They exist. Yeah. And it has been weird with the volume thing. Like for me, the two companies that have gone down in volume have been Ultra, ironically.
Oh, yeah, they have. Yeah.
And New Balance.
I would
and
totally
both of those
agree.
used to be so roomy.
Yeah.
And in general, Puma is pretty low volume for me as well.
Yeah.
And I actually sized up in Puma for the first time, and I'm like super pumped about it. It's been fitting so well, and I am enjoying running in it. But yeah, I've been surprised with New Balance and Ultra, like just dropping the height of their toe boxes.
Yeah.
It's been weird.
New Balance has gone back and forth a couple times since I was working in running stores where they were super wide and then they got narrow and then they go back to being wide and then it's kind of like things kind of fluctuate. Ultra is the interesting one where the volume has definitely decreased over the last couple of years.
I'm curious too with New Balance if they use different lasts for their fuel cell line and their their fresh foam line. Because I do think, I've been running in the Balos or whatever, and in the More, I've put them both on, and they fit pretty different. And I find that also, and I guess those are both fresh foam, so that's a terrible example. But when I think about the Rebel V3, that one was really snug for me, and SC Trainer V2, the SC Trail, those were all more. Anyway.
I have a comment for New Balance.
Yeah.
Why was the Minimus series not called the Less? And then you have the More, which is the Max Cushion.
Well, the Minimus line was out before, wasn't it?
I'm just saying, I think it would have made more sense to call it New Balance Less.
Maybe should have called it Maximus.
Not like Less. It's more straightforward.
Instead of More. Anyway.
Terrible.
Well, let's move forward. Okay, next question from Evan is the old speed build dead, meaning light, low stack, flexible racers? Are those dead?
I don't
David
think so.
shook his head no.
I'm going to say for the moment, yes. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Which
Matt, I have a question.
Yeah, I've already packed it away.
Dead means dead.
Gone.
Yeah. For the moment, I guess you can be.
All right, I will clarify this. I'm going to say yes.
That's honestly that's the quote of the podcast. Yeah. Dead means dead.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes, with some mild exceptions that those low stack shoes that are flexible, for racing speed stuff, I feel like most people are
Topo Cyclone 2.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
That's not low stack though, guys.
That's 25?
What's the stack height on that?
What is it?
I'm saying less. Maybe I'm thinking less than 20. I'm thinking the OG stuff. I'm thinking the Saucony Type A, Mizuno Wave Universe. That kind of stuff was what I'm thinking.
Was Type A less than 20?
I think it was. It was low. It was definitely low.
I'll look some stuff up while y'all talk.
But I do think that is gone because I think you're going to still have those moderate stack height stuff like the Cielo Road. The Takumi Sen doesn't count as low stack because it's actually pretty high stack, even though it looks like it. But I do think the low stack stuff is gone. I think what you'll see is people continuing to get more and more advanced resilient foams, keeping these maximalist geometry, because to really maximize the foams, you need more material for it to be able to compress and then reform. So, and the market really hasn't gone in that direction. So unless something crazy happened with foams and geometry stuff like that, I don't think people are going to want that. So, but who knows, there might be a market for going, hey, you have this super shoe. Maybe you need to learn to be a little bit smarter with this, and you shouldn't train with this all the time. If you use kind of a more moderate stack height, slightly flexible shoe for your more speed days, you're actually going to get more just from Justin Maddie's study that talking about you get more of an economy benefit a training benefit out of running in those kind of more traditional training, like speed shoes. Maybe people might think that, but most runners aren't going to want to do that. They're going to want one shoe. I just want the fastest shoe. I want to do this. And so I think they're dead, sadly.
Go ahead, David.
I think of it from a different lane. I think of it from kind of a youth athletic scene. I think of like high school cross country and like the Nike Streak series is still going, right? Streak LT, whatever they call it.
No,
now.
That's gone.
LT is gone.
It's gone.
Kilkenny
somebody correct
is still
me.
around. Saucony, Kilkenny.
That's fair.
Like there's different low stack racing shoes that people still like that feeling for going fast.
Is that
not
a spike?
everyone?
That's cross country spike. Are we talking about like?
I mean, California is like the only state on the planet that doesn't allow high schoolers to wear spikes.
Yeah.
So I think it still stands. But like, there's people that crave low stack racing shoes, and you look at a collegiate setting, and everyone's wearing track spikes out on cross courses or on the track. And there are some low profile flats that people have used, for racing as well. Before the Audios ended up becoming kind of a lightweight trainer, that's what a lot of people raced races in, that they either were training for, or they just wanted a little bit more on them than, let's say, the XC series spike that they had. So I think there's still a want for it. I just don't think it's the general population. Like, and I think that's kind of been the case with the performance category for a long time, up until very recently when, the super shoes kind of became popular. But like racing shoes never were that popular for a lot of people.
It's true.
That's why it's crazy now that you see so many recreational runners with super shoes, because before those came out, you didn't see the average person buying a racing flat or like a super shoe. It was just, they would do their trainers.
Scary.
Yeah. It was a scary shoe. And honestly, when you put them on, you're like, how can I run in this? But yeah, the racing shoes have really become commercialized and have really gone out. It's like the most we've ever seen this category sell.
I think they're kind of, I lean towards they're more dead than not dead. And I know that's me.
I mean, but
did you just say? but the answer is dead or not dead.
I know.
I'd be leaning towards dead, like that, but they're still alive,
They're
and I
still
think
alive.
they will be alive for a while.
I'm going to say dead as well.
Are we doing
I can't
like
believe I
Monty
just walked
Python?
myself into that.
Are we doing like
yet.
Monty Python? Like, I'm not dead yet. Like, is that
Oh
what we're
my
doing
goodness!
here?
Okay, so
Is
I
that
looked
like
up
a Wisconsin thing?
I looked up specs, and I remember, Matt, you sent me my first ever pair of like racing flats. You're like, I got you the shoe, and you should go racing it. Do you remember what you sent me? Or no? You don't have to. It's okay. It just means you don't care about our friendship.
Did I feel like it was Adidas Adios. No, it wasn't the Adios.
No, don't worry. It's fine. I know you don't care about me.
It was
it's the ASICS Tarther Edge.
Oh, that's right.
That?
Yes,
And
I remember that.
You sent me an ASICS Tarther Edge, and
dude, we're talking OG. Like my memory is not that great.
You also Go ahead, David.
Rival Waffle still exists too, and that is going to be a shoe that sells pretty well, I think, to a lot of people. So, or a lot in a niche position. Yeah, but
not that much.
I don't see that one going away.
Nathan.
And then you also sent me a 361 racing flat. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
it was yellow.
Right. Yes.
Wasn't it the Feizu?
I think it was the Feizu.
Yeah.
But either way, the stack of the Tarther Edge is 25 in the heel, 15 in the forefoot.
Yeah.
Whereas like the stack of the Cyclone 2 is 27, 22. So there's a little bit more in the Cyclone, but they weigh the same. And it's one of those, like, that's why I think that they're dead, is because now we're able to put more foam at the same weight. So it's like, why would you go for, like, the goal of these shoes was to make things as low and light as possible. Mm-hmm. Now we don't need them to be low because we can just keep them light. Yep. So I don't think that, unless it's going to be a very niche thing, but I don't think that there are companies putting any R&D into these low, flat, flexible kind of racing shoes. David, I feel like you got something cooking in your mind.
No, I think the lineage of those shoes are still going to be around, because it also is a budget racing option for a lot of people too, where maybe they can't afford a $250 super shoe to go run their 5K in, and then they're happy with a $70 flat that is light and decently responsive on their foot.
Yeah, but I feel like the people who are going to choose the waffle racer are an extremely small niche population. Now that's like it's not going to be
dead.
It's not dead, but it's not mainstream. I think that you're still going to get your high school athlete that's been told, "Hey, you need a cross spike," that might buy that flat. But like general market, it's dead.
But it was never alive to begin with, would be my argument.
Yeah, that's fair.
No one's ever made any money off of racing flats until recently.
So,
but I still would say
you're going to tell me that the Tartar Edge,
no,
they profited off of that.
Maybe in Japan in that market in the past, but I feel like
that's always been the long time argument is that we don't make any money off this, but we make them,
right. So your argument,
so you don't really invest into those shoes quite as much because there's just not as many people that are going to buy them. That's always been the case.
Yeah. So maybe the point would be those super low stack, the lightweight flexible stuff really never was that alive to begin with. It was so niche that maybe that's the comment. It wasn't that alive to begin with, except for the few number of people that went and raced in that stuff. Because companies used to lose money on creating racing flats because they just couldn't sell the volume. Now I wonder what the returns are.
So I have not been listening, but I have been looking up our review of the 361 FISU, and I just need to read part of. Also, I had my worst race ever in the FISU. I was running a half marathon. It was 95 at race start, and I got 5 miles in, and it wasn't the shoe, it was the day.
Yeah.
It was 100% humidity. It was terrible. All right, here's Matt's thoughts as a DPT from probably 5 years ago on the 361 FISU. It says, the FISU is the kind of shoe that reminds me of how effective and sexy being simple can be. This is a great looking and riding shoe, yet it has a simple EVA midsole, a good fit that gives a little bit of wiggle room in the forefoot and the snug heel. There's nothing magic about this shoe, yet it's what I wanted out of so many previous racers. The Adios, Hyperion, Streak, Chaser are all good shoes, but lacked a little something. All these shoes have little extras, plates, special midsoles, etc. The FISU still feels better and faster than all of them, yet only has EVA. Why? Because sometimes the simplest answer is the best. That's why many of the Japanese racers like the ASICS Sorority series have changed very little over the years, but remain favorites in the Asian market. Look at that.
I very much disagree with my statement. The other shoes were a lot better.
I actually didn't mind the FISU. I think it would be a solid workout shoe. I don't know if I'd choose to race in it over other shoes that are out, but
right.
If you gave me a pair of FISU ones right now, I could go and do track workouts in it.
FISU? How am I not
FEISU. Don't go. We don't need to go any further down this.
No, we don't need to rabbit hole
sorry,
this.
But this is awesome.
I'm remembering that was a great shoe. I really liked it.
Yeah, not the Pacer ST. I think your mind was going Pacer ST.
I was going Pacer. The FISU was a great shoe, and I actually did some pretty fast races in it. Actually,
yeah. It's a good shoe.
That was when I first started running again. Yeah. I remember
that's right.
Wore that for a 5K.
I remember that.
That may have been our first all of us in one review together.
It might have, yeah.
You think so?
It was that time frame.
361 Phantom?
No,
that was
came
later.
Beforehand. That was
That was later?
Was it? No, Phantom was beforehand, I think.
Phantom and Spire. Or not Spire. Whatever their stability one was.
I think it was the Phantom 2.
This is not important.
We are going way off topic.
Yeah, we are way off.
This is vintage.
For those that wanted some deep cuts, they're getting it.
Yes.
We're going way off topic.
I'm going to move us on to our next question from Evan. I have to ask this one, and Matt, I'm just going to pose it to you because you think about stability a lot, and then we'll go on to another question.
Yep.
But Evan's question is, what type of, quote, support doesn't exist that you would like to see?
It's a good question. Are we talking? All right, I'm just going to go and take a shot at this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be careful with how I'm saying this. I really appreciate where stability is going. The stability, if Evan's talking specifically about a mechanism, then I would say that the whole move away from posts isn't necessarily a good thing. I think variety is key. We're seeing a complete disappearance of posted shoes, which I'm not giving my responsibility for this, but I think reminding people that different things work for different people is great. And so if people want that post feeling, it's gone for the market. So I'd love to see just a teeny bit of that. You don't need it in every shoe, but it's nice to have that option. Where my brain goes with this is I would really like to see the light stability category come back. I think that category is pretty much gone and it's disappeared. So you really go neutral, moderate stability, although a lot of the moderate stability shoes are borderline mild stability right now, but a true mild stability category I think is mostly gone except for the Launch GTS and the Hyperion GTS, and I'm just biasing that because Evan asked it. There are a couple on the market, but that mild stability category is where I would really like to see come back for people that just need a little bit, but not too much. That used to be really popular.
Do you feel like the existence of geometric shaping of neutral shoes that make them what we've kind of coined as stable neutral has taken over that mild stability? Or?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think stable neutral has really taken over that category. So maybe it's not necessary. So
the other thing that you've talked about in the past that popped into my mind when I read this question was there's been a couple of shoes. I think one was from Newton. And then I know that when that Puma stability shoe came out, they had some of this worked in too, but kind of some more stuff directed at the forefoot.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
That's a great, I apologize.
That's where I kind of struggle with things where I'm like, I kind of wish this was just a little bit more stable in the forefoot.
Yeah, because
that's kind of where
the Puma, the front was great. The back half was not good, and that ruined that shoe for me.
That was the Forever Run, right?
Yeah, I think so. The last shoe I remember before that really had that was the Skechers Forza that actually had stability that went all the way into the forefoot. So that's probably another thing. Forefoot stability, like true forefoot stability, pretty much doesn't exist. And people, hopefully, the more we've talked about this, understand that the arch isn't just the midfoot. There are multiple parts to it, and people can have challenges with controlling motion at different points. So I think the forefoot is definitely something that I'd love to see a little bit more of, because it usually gets forgotten behind the midfoot and heel. That's a really good point.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, let's move on to the next question. And this is from Elizabeth at Running Explained. Hey, Elizabeth. We need to reach back out to get you on the podcast. We've been talking about that. All right. Anyway, her question is, given the significant advancements in shoe technology over the past decade, do you foresee any potential future limits on what is considered, quote, race legal beyond just capping stack height? And I think that there have been some others. I think you can't have multiple plates stacked on top of each other. There's some other basically spring mechanisms that they have eliminated, but any other thoughts on this question?
I mean, they already said it, so black and white there. If they do, it's not going to be for a little bit unless there's some massive, performance enhancing thing within the mechanisms that have been made.
You're not allowed to use flubber as a midsole material.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, flubber.
I don't know. Yeah, they've already made it pretty rigid.
Yeah. That's a great question. Not that I can think of personally.
I think that there are going to be innovations that come out in shoes that some of them are just going to flop hard. But I think that there's going to be other ways to construct materials that aren't necessarily foam or like a plate as we currently think of them that provide some return that we may not see now. And I could see, but I think it's going to take a very creative innovation to change them again. I don't think anything that we have now that we have seen in the works is going to go beyond what's currently there with kind of avoiding springs and the stack height. So it's going to be something that I don't know about that would have to change it.
Agreed.
David, do you have further thoughts on it?
No. I mean, that's all pretty consistent with what I'm thinking, but I think it would have to take something truly,
remarkable,
shake the industry up. Yeah.
I think that's when I think about that, I'm like, that year in the Olympics when those suits came out, and then they're like, all right, we're not going to use these suits anymore. It's going to be something like that, where it's like this, either it has to just become, this is the new standard that everyone needs to have equal access to, or that's just too much advantage. Now we can't even have meaningful records anymore because it's just
Right.
a whole new sport. And I don't think we're quite there yet, even with what we have now. That'd be a whole other question. All right, let's move forward to the next question. This is from Victoria from Train Smart Run Strong. She's a fellow PT. Hello. And she's asking, if you could relate your personality to any running shoe, which shoe would you pick and why?
Who wants to go first?
Matt, you have one, so
right,
I can see the look on your face. You should just do it.
Hopefully this is funny. I feel like the Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro would be the shoe that fits my personality, because you look at it and you're like, what is this? How is this going to work? Fits just a little bit off, and you're like, there's no way that this is a thing. And then, like, if you have anybody who's actually seen me run before, which Nathan and David can both confirm, when you watch me run, there's no way he's going forwards. That makes no sense. And the heels also cut off too, so I don't have anything to wear. That's why the durability is so great. Yeah.
When I watch you run, I'm like, how does this dude like run a 15-minute 5K? Like, I just don't understand how these things line up. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. My coach in college, when it was just the two of us flying to nationals, because I was the only one to make cross-country nationals. He looks at me and goes, Kleiner, if you told me 4 years ago that I was going to be sitting on the plane going to nationals with you, I would have. And then I can't repeat what he said next. And I was like, all right, thanks, coach. This is really
funny.
I'm terribly sick. I think I'm going to die. And this is the worst pep talk. Thanks a lot. But
my pick for you is going to actually be the Adidas Audio Strung 2 Prime X. Oh my gosh, Prime X2. I'm definitely tired.
Yeah.
Strung Prime X2.
Yeah.
Be kind of similar, where it's just like, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
There's just like, and there's a lot underfoot.
Yeah. And maybe that might be better, because I can handle, I mean, the newest version, not quite as quick, but it can handle training, some racing. It can do a little everything, but it just looks weird. And you're like, whose idea was this? But somehow it executes and it keeps going through things. You're like, I don't understand how you're still going. Like, and
it epitomizes too, like, of all of us, the person who gets antsy for shoes the most is Matt by a million. Like, Matt is like waiting for shoes to come to his door. Everyone else is like,
Nathan, are we getting this? Nathan, are we getting this?
We're clearly fine.
Yeah.
But Matt's always waiting. I feel like the Strung X2 is like the epitome of a shoe that Matt would see.
Yeah.
And be like, I need that.
I need to try that. Yeah.
And I'm gonna buy it for $8,000.
I have learned not to do that. For those who don't know, and some OG listeners, I have done some stupid purchases just to get a shoe, and occasionally this has backfired, because the shoe that shoe has also then showed up like 2 days later. I'm like,
yeah.
That's after he would say, should I get this? And be like, no, it's going to be coming. He's like, okay, I'll get it.
Yeah. Still got it.
All right, David, what do you got?
I don't really have anything too glamorous. Like, the one that like comes to mind for me, I think I'd probably say the Mizuno Wave Rider series.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Yeah. I feel like it's consistent. It doesn't change too much. It's pretty low key for the most part, and it gets the job done. It can do a little bit of everything, like you're saying, and it's, I don't know, it's pretty durable, and it's kind of just always there. So I don't know.
Have you run the new one yet?
Tomorrow, maiden voyage.
Got it.
Ew, that's exciting. Yeah. I thought you were going to say Taroko to bring that back as well.
Yeah, 361 Taroko, baby. Let's go.
That's another, like, if you have not been following us from the very beginning, you have no idea what that means.
You don't know what we're talking about.
And we're only doing that for the 200th episode. No, that's good. Matt, do you have one for David that came into your mind?
Bach is somewhere out there very sad that I did not say it's 361.
It was probably going to be it was going to be the Taroko, honestly, as a joke, and now I'm lost because David took it.
Well, I didn't.
So I haven't picked the shoe for David, but the vibe that I have for David is in the realm of the Cyclone 2, where it's like the shoe that I could like pretty much do whatever in, or like the Kinvara. Like, maybe it's the Kinvara, because I remember when you would run the Kinvara, because I see you as a person who's just like pretty chill. Like, I'm up for whatever. And I'm going to like be consistent and eat tacos. And so I feel like for you, the Kinvara was a shoe that you took it on like 22-mile runs, and then you would do like short interval workouts with it. And you just kind of like did everything. And you're like, it's a good shoe. And then you'd be like, yeah, it's a trail shoe too, by the way. You just like do everything with it. So the Kinvara, or like that vibe where it would spread the gamut, and just kind of, because it's been there for a long time. That's why the Cyclone doesn't work, because it hasn't been there forever.
Yeah, it's not like.
But I think there's a lineage with the Kinvara that nothing fancy, but although you're fancy, you're from Santa Barbara, or live in Santa Barbara. I was kind of in a similar lines with you, David, in terms of like, I was trying to think of like a shoe that isn't too fancy, but also I feel like I haven't come into my own personality until like maybe the last 10 years, like since meeting Jana, and she's like helped me a lot in my life. And then just like going through kind of refining fire stuff over the last couple of years and like learning who I am. So I wanted a shoe that like is reliable, because I think that's where I'm at now, but hasn't been around forever. And so I'm going with the ASICS Nova Blast series, just because I think it's turned into this like reliable trainer, but they had to like work out the kinks a couple years ago with like the first version. Because from what I understand, that shoe wasn't created as like a running shoe. They were like, oh, this is kind of just like a shoe. And then from what I understand, Believe in the Run basically said to them, this is a running shoe. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they started putting work into it, from what I understand. It's kind of a cool story. And so now I see it as one of their more reliable trainers that can kind of do what it needs to do.
I like that. That was good.
Cool. All right, let's move forward. We have 2 more questions. This one is from Casey McCombs. He has been on our show at the time. He was working with Reebok. Now he works with a couple different companies. I know he's been with Topo and some other stuff like that, which is, if you all haven't heard, Topo is on the East Coast in Massachusetts. It's pretty cool. Pretty neat company. All right. And his question is this: having run in hundreds of shoes now, how would you assemble the best shoes of all time? What upper would it have? What heel? What offset, stack, geometry, toe spring, price point, etc.? I want to hear about your Franken shoe ideas.
I've been thinking about this for like a day and still don't have an answer.
I know, that's hard.
I'll take a stab at it though.
Great.
Got it. So my ideal shoe would be kind of in the lightweight training realm and would have a secure but moderately flexible upper, especially in the forefoot. It would have obviously a gusseted tongue, because that's what I always talk about. It would be probably in the 8 to 9 ounce range for men's size 9. So get in that lightweight trainer category. It would have somewhere in the realm of 6 to 8 millimeters. Probably that's probably pretty average. So I feel like a lot of people can handle that. Geometry would obviously have a posterior lateral bevel, obviously. And then it would have a good rocker in the forefoot, but there would be no toe spring. It would have like completely flat. It would be mildly to moderately flexible, just enough that feels comfortable, but not so much it's going to irritate the toes. Price point, I'd like to keep this within, understanding the industry, within like 120, 130 bucks. I feel like that's going to be better to be able to reach people. And then when it gets discounted, hopefully it reaches even more people. But yeah, that kind of lightweight trainer, something you can strap on for almost anything out there, a long run. It'd probably be more in that moderate to higher stack range, but that versatile shoe that runners, especially getting into the sport, can go, I can just put this on and not think about this and just go do almost whatever, would kind of be my shoe that I would create at the moment.
Am I next?
So
I was going to just be quiet until you talked.
Just till I said something.
I'm not ready to. Yeah.
I think for me, I would probably like to have a shoe that's kind of like what the OG Mizuno Wave Rebellion wanted to be. Kind of like a lightweight, snappy. I like my Firm Boys. Like I don't really like super mushy, compliant foams. They tend to hurt my feet. So something that has just a little bit more, just resilience. Not quite as compliant. But I like some flexibility, but I don't really want it to be like super flexible. The only like real exception to that would probably be the Cyclone 2 and the Kinvara have worked really well for me. And those are both pretty flexible shoes. But I think if I was like wanting something that can like I don't know. I kind of like having just a little bit of rigidity. I'm with Klein on the forefoot, very gradual rocker, but like nothing too crazy going on there. I kind of like to really push off of my forefoot in a natural way. I probably don't need quite as dramatic of a heel bevel as Klein, just kind of a mild to moderate. Stack height, I probably say in that 30 range, maybe down to 22. In the forefoot, 8mm drop ish. And I'd like to have a little bit of I do struggle with some forefoot stability. So I actually maybe a little bit of sole flaring there. And I'm a traction boy. Like I also like, if I can feel like I'm kind of clawing the ground, that'd be great. Weight range. If you could get all of that in 8-ish, 9-ish ounce package, I think that could be a really fun shoe to run in. That'd probably like kind of like my Franken shoe there.
Price point, where do you see a shoe like that being able to fall?
Yeah, if it's got like pretty good materials, doesn't necessarily have to be plated, whether it's like a maybe a plastic plate of some kind, whether nylon P-backs or not plated at all. I'd be fine with any of those options. I'm thinking probably like in the 160-ish range. Kind of like the lightweight trainer that can kind of hit a little bit of everything and race if you really wanted to.
Cool. Yeah, I think that when I hear this question, like my mind zeroes in on that word best, and I'm always like, best for what? Like, what do I want it to be best for? And my mind, when I read it, is like just kind of best all around shoe, which kind of brings me to a boring answer that's very similar to a lot of the stuff that y'all just said. And so, I would also want something that is not plated for the sake of performance, but I'd be okay if a plate was in there for stabilizing the foam. Because I think for me, I'm really that's why I like the RunCat scale, is because it doesn't necessarily put things on like a softest to firmest, but it's like what's softer, too soft or too firm for you. And for myself, like I think that I like things that fall a little bit in the middle. If it's too soft, my feet just get sore and uncomfortable. David and I are like, we talked about foot injuries last week.
With the soft stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we can't fully handle it. And so if it's too soft, I just have a problem. If it's too firm, it's just not fun to run in. Like we're bringing up 361 a lot, but the 361 Fierce, I think it was like the first version of that. That one was so firm that I couldn't handle it. So I think from a softness perspective, I really like the softness of Power Run PB in the speed. I also like the softness level of the Deviate 3 from Puma. I think that that's like the sweet spot for me, where it's cushioned, but it's not like mushy. When it gets mushy, I don't like it so much. So I like that soft, but a little bit more rebound. I would put like the Nova Blast cushioning kind of in that same realm. I want a rocker, but I don't want toe spring as well, because I want to be able to do a lot of daily miles. And again, if a plate's in there, it's got to only be for stabilizing the foam, not for like really stiffening up the forefoot. I would want a heel bevel too. I like kind of that 6 to 8mm drop, and probably cushioning like stack wise somewhere between 28 to 38, somewhere in that realm between the heel and the forefoot. And it feel like it's a lot to ask for, but I'd want it to be under 150, under 140 for like a really nice trainer, which like I feel like a shoe that's actually really close is the
Yeah.
Trinusa from ASICS.
Because I like the Nusa. That's also one part of the inspiration of what I was saying too, but some just a little less rounded. But yeah,
use a little less toe spring, but
less toe spring, and a little wider midfoot. Because I think the thing that I want is like a slightly softer foam, but I don't want it to narrow out in the midfoot. I want that to stay a little bit wider, but I also don't want a ton of heel flaring laterally in the rear foot to make it too wide. Like I don't need that. So that's why I like the speed versus something like the Superblast, which I like the Superblast, and the new ones I enjoy it a lot, but that's just super wide in the rear foot. So that's what I would say. Yeah, Matt.
I don't know why I forgot to say stable, neutral, or mild stability of all things.
Oh, yes.
I'm tired.
Yeah. But why? You have your PhD now. You can't be tired. It's not like you're a dad with a young child and a job and you're still doing edits for your dissertation.
Yeah, so I still have to submit the dissertation, which takes forever.
Yeah. Okay, we are on our final question of the 200th episode of the podcast. And this is from our very own Bach Fam. And if you could, in the comments below, if you're still with us after an hour and 5 minutes, you should drop him. So Bach's our media manager. He gets all of our content out on our social media and on our website. And he's going to hate me for saying this, but you should drop him like a thank you. Really cool origin story is like he followed us as like just kind of like following along with what we were doing. He basically sent us an email that said, y'all have awesome stuff, but you suck at getting it out there. That's not what he said, but if you're reading between the lines, and he's like, this is what I could help you do. And so he has been so pivotal in helping our reach grow in a way that's actually made our work feel way more meaningful. So huge thank you to him. And then you can also give a shout out and a thank you to BJ. He was also following along with what we were doing, and we were having a lot of issues with this podcast and our audio quality. It was really bad. And we tried a couple things and it was still really bad. And he's like, hey guys, like I could probably help you out. And he's just become such an instrumental part of the team. And so we're super thankful for Bach and BJ, two faces that you don't get to see a lot, but play a huge role in getting this stuff out there. So
even though I harassed both of them about trying to get them on the podcast, and they're like, "Yes, I'm doing that."
We got BJ on one time.
We got BJ on one time.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Bach, we have it.
Yeah. All right. But here's the question from Bach. What is something you'd like to see Doctors of Running do in the next 200 episodes of the podcast and for the group in general over the next 2 years?
I feel like I have to go first since I founded this thing.
This is your thing.
Pressure. I really like where we're going right now. I like the trajectory. Somebody actually reviewed us a couple days ago and said that they were never sure if we actually liked the shoe or not. And I thought that was the biggest compliment we could get because it told me that we are staying very unbiased and trying to really figure out who would this shoe work for, who would it not work for, and having a little section on, hey, we kind of like this, but also not trying to avoid our personal opinions and try to stay objective as possible. So I don't think that was intended as a compliment, but I took it as a huge compliment. So I would like us to continue to see what we can do to find out what's going to work best for the individual. So I think that's all we're doing is continuing to learn, grow in our own ways and how we're analyzing things and understanding the human beings that come and read our stuff, view, and consume our stuff. I'd like us to keep focusing on them and continue to be really careful about not selling product, not getting biased, and staying very true to the original educational component of this. That's one of the big things. In terms of the group in general, I think it's been really nice to have a close-knit group. I know a lot of review sites have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And I will say that keeping this manageable, because all of us have full-time jobs. This is a thing that we do on the side, so it does take a lot of work. And there's a lot of late nights writing up reviews or putting this stuff out there. But I'd like us to continue that. I think if this ever takes over our lives, that's going to be a question we need to ask, like, is this really worth it? But the fact that it is supporting us and is a fun thing for us to take a break and learn, I think that's where it needs to go. So I want it to stay like that. And for the moment, I think our group is great. We've got an awesome crew. Everybody contributes. Everybody knows how to take a joke, give each other a hard time, but also be really supportive. So I like the trajectory we're going. I just want to make sure that we continue to refine, learn, and grow. So that is where I really want us to continue. It was super vague, but
no, that's great.
No, I thought it was great. Yeah.
I think for myself, I agree with what you said, Matt, and I'm thankful for you and your kind of vision for this whole deal. And I think bringing Andrea on has been super valuable in getting her. I mean, she's just a brilliant physical therapist. She's so smart, and her ability to consider the impacts of shoes, but also beyond. She's just so knowledgeable and has a lot of experience as a professional athlete as well from her cycling days. So I'm just so thankful that she's on the team. I think in the realm of continuing the education, I would love for this podcast to continue to and even heighten our times that we have the researchers on who have performed studies. I think there's a level of understanding and depth that they are able to provide that you just don't get from even hearing us talk or other kind of practitioners. There's like super valuable like praxis and like actually like wheels on the ground from practitioners. I think that there's just some like depth of understanding that we can get from the researchers who are doing the studies and know how far can we actually stretch these results. And so I would love to continue to bring people on. Like I've got people in my mind like Brian Heiderscheit and Chris Powers and Irene Davis, and like just starting to bring Rich Willie back and bring on a lot of these people who are doing meaningful research. I think that it fits our how our minds work, and we can ask them meaningful questions that help translate from the researcher through the practitioner to the runner. So I'm hoping we can do more of that. I hope in the next 2 years that we all can get together for a fun hangout. And that has nothing to do with.
Sorry, I didn't ask that. I didn't answer that part.
But like, I want to just like get everybody to Wisconsin, or we all go somewhere in the mountains somewhere and just like hang out for a long weekend. I think that would be super fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I'd like to like doubling down on who we are in terms of the educational content and being the nerds, being the ones, but also, we need a DOR retreat finally. Things have been pretty crazy. So I think we are ripe
DOR retreat
for this in the next 2 years for sure.
David, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of piggybacking off of you guys, but it's what I was thinking from the start as well. And it's really just building off of the educational platform that we do have and staying true to our roots. And really, this is ultimately for the listeners. This is for our patients. This is for everyone that's tuning in to learn more. And, it's great that we have started to make some money from this over the last X amount of years, but even then it's not that much in comparison to what we make as full-time clinicians. It's anything really. And so we do this because we love it. And I think it's good to build off of that and to continue creating an educational platform. And we've done it in some other ways with like the Monday Shakeouts and some other things. And obviously that requires more content, more work, those types of things. So there's a balance, but I think like staying true to the roots and just trying to make information as accessible for the listeners as best we can. And I agree too with having certain podcast guests. And I think it would be nice to branch out of the running every once in a while too. And it can be shaped towards running, but also towards a greater wellness community as well, whether it's sleep, mindfulness, nutrition, like things like that. So that's kind of where my brain goes, is like, we have a nice platform that is built on education and we can educate more. So
100%.
There is one more question.
And speaking of true to our roots, this is something that we used to do for like every single podcast episode, is we would bring up a shoe and we would say, if this shoe was a blank. It was like a segment that we did. So we are bringing the segment back, and Bach wrote this, and I'm actually modifying it to make it even better.
Please don't be like, if this was a sports team, like what?
If the ASICS Superblast 2
what happened?
were an NBA player, what player would it be and why? Matt, you go first.
Wow, we're really doing true to roots. So I'm just going to sit here awkwardly and have no idea.
What we used to do is have us compare shoes to like sports stuff, and Matt doesn't pay attention.
Yeah.
I have one too.
I've got an NBA player.
What's your NBA player?
Superblast 2, it's Nikola Jokic.
Oh my gosh, tell me why.
On the surface, it looks like a lot. But it's actually light. It's nimble. It can endure and take a punch. Like, that guy has played so many full games that like Denver's got to go make him a statue. Like, he has done so much for that team, almost single-handedly before he got help, around there. And I feel like, it's just like on the surface, just looking at it, you're like, I don't know what's going on here if you know nothing about the shoe. But then you see it perform, and it performs quite well. And it can endure for pretty good amounts of mileage, lengths of distances, et cetera, et cetera.
Your answer's better. My answer was going to be Tyrese Halliburton, because you have this new guy on the scene who's a little bit cocky about who they are, pretty like full of themselves. And I'm just bitter because the Pacers beat the Bucks. But
yeah, I was going to say that felt personal.
Yeah, it is. The NBA makes me so like frustrated. Anyway, so Tyrese Halliburton, and like he's a budget super shoe, like a budget superstar, where it's like he's not actually that good. Like he's not the Metaspeed Paris, or the Edge, but or Paris, whatever. I can't say words.
Easy there.
But he's still good. Like he's awesome. But he's not Giannis. But he's not Giannis.
Chris Middleton.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to Doctors of Trash Talking.
But I'm a huge Middleton fan. Like I wouldn't go and say that.
I'm just being whatever. All right, Matt, what's your answer?
I have no idea. I'm going to take a hard pass. I have no idea.
The original question is if the ASICS Superblast 2 was a meal, what meal would it be and why?
I still don't have an answer. You to answer. Give me some time to think.
A meal.
A meal.
Man.
Just come up with something. We'll wrap it up for everybody.
Just say Steph Curry and we'll go on with our lives.
Fine. Yes, Steph Curry. I don't
Let's
know.
Go.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on the Doctors of Running podcast, formerly known as Doctors of Running Virtual Roundtable. It's been a joy being able to do these 200 episodes with all of you. And honestly, it's because y'all join us on this that we keep doing it. So thank you for joining and being a part of this. And if you want to enter the giveaway, you just got to follow and subscribe and leave a review you can, and then just comment on the YouTube video and we will get you entered and get that prize pack out to the winner. But thank you everybody for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.